Welcome to One Way to Machines and the 8th Gen Honda Civic series. In this video, we'll go over a common problem with the manual transmission Honda Civics, usually over 200,000 kilometers. This applies to the R18 4-cylinder equipped Honda Civics, not the Honda Civic Si. We will be discussing bad transmission input shaft bearings. This particular Civic was purchased at 253,000 kilometers and it currently has 272,000 kilometers. When this vehicle was purchased used, I did not pay too much attention to the sound that I should have. I thought that it was a rattling heat shield, and the person I was buying it from was in complete denial of there being any sound, although I mentioned it about 10 times on the test drive that there is a light vibrating sound coming from the drivetrain when the car moves. This was not a person that didn't know anything about cars, and they also had everything done at a professional mechanic, so there were lots of receipts. This person most likely took this car in, and a mechanic with a trained ear and somebody that knows about cars heard the faintest sound of that transmission input shaft bearing and told him, look, you either have a $1,000 to $1,500 job on your hands, or this is the time to offload the car where the problem hasn't gotten too bad. That's pretty much what ended up happening. I did hear the sound on the test drive. Every time you would release the clutch slightly, you would hear this slight noise like a vibrating sound, almost identical to what a lightly rattling heat shield would sound like, which is why I'm telling you this is a very important check to do. The most important check when you buy a manual transmission R18 8th Gen is this transmission input shaft bearing, because the cost of doing this job at a shop could potentially be worth more than half of the value of your car that you're purchasing, in which case it could be a bad purchase. This one is extremely clean. The rust on the bottom is minimal. The paint's in great condition, which is very rare. I'll also do a video on that. But the point here is, on the test drive, turn the music off, everything off, go for a long drive, and know that with this car, this is not a rattling heat shield or something else that's loose. If you start letting out the clutch, especially in first and second, and you hear the faintest vibrating sound coming from the underneath the center console or the front of the car, be sure that this transmission input shaft bearing is starting to go bad. And it's very gradual. That light sound stayed, and then it gets really bad if you keep driving with it. Although there is a window that you can drive with the bearing before you get it replaced. Unfortunately, this vehicle was repaired before I started my YouTube channel, so we're not going to have a full tutorial video on it, but I will be buying even more 8th Gen Civics for this channel, so that is a job that we will do. The first check that you should do when everything is silent inside of the car is to push the clutch pedal in and see if any noise in the background changes. If the sound goes away, any kind of vibration, humming, sound from the car, and you let the clutch back out and it comes back, that's the transmission input shaft bearing. So, clutch out, you're going to hear a slight vibration or humming noise. Push the clutch in, sound is completely gone. Let the clutch back out. If you hear the sound, bad transmission input shaft bearing. Pilot bearings and throwout bearings are a different subject and they will be covered later on. As far as I know, those are not common on this car to go bad. But the reason the transmission input shaft bearing is a big deal on this car is because these are unibody cars. They're not very simple to get the transmission out. And especially when they're higher mileage, if you're in a rust area, it's a big task to get that subframe out, and then you have to pull the transmission, and you also have to open the transmission to change the transmission input shaft bearing. So this is not a job for a novice mechanic, and I say novice because a lot of people buying these cars, they're going to be cheap. It could be your first car. This is not a cheap job. It's not an easy job. You need to have experience if you're going to tackle doing this job yourself. So for some people, if the car is rough, it's most likely worth it to pass up on it. Even if you're experienced and the car is in rough shape, pass up on it. It's not worth it to buy the car. Now, the more clever of you will think, okay, the subframe is difficult, but then I'll just get a used transmission from the salvage yard to change out. That's also not a good idea because this is a common problem. The one you get from the salvage yard, you don't know when it's going to have that problem try to develop itself again. So you need to pull the transmission that comes with the car, that you know shifts through all the gears well, all the synchros are good, and you change the actual bearing inside of this transmission, put it back, and then you'll have a lot more kilometers on this car. Because these cars, everything about them is very tough and they last a long time. This is my second 8th gen that I currently own, so I own 2 of these. And this problem, the other one is an automatic. So I thought I knew everything about these cars going into this. And the one small thing that caught me up on this car was one bearing. It's a $30 bearing, but it's a huge job to do. That being said, the manual transmission is a very strong transmission. I trust this car more to tow light loads than I would the automatic. We'll have completely different videos on the automatic car. The focus here is the most expensive possibly repair on these cars that can make a big difference in your purchase decision, or if you are to keep the car and put money into it. Because there's lots of other things that do go wrong on these cars. The exhaust rust out, they break out in different places. We'll do videos on that stuff. But none of those things are deal breakers. All the things that happen on these cars, they're not necessarily all simple repairs, but they are doable repairs and worth it to do on a car that's this well built. This is the only one that is very important to pay attention to. Alright, so we're going to go underneath the car now so that I can show you the subframe. So at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, I'm looking underneath the car from the driver's side, and that's the passenger disc brake over there at the bottom left-hand side of your screen for a reference point. So this here in the center of your screen is the subframe. There's a lot of bolts. They can be rusty to take out. And right here, there's the transmission, okay? This job can turn into a tricky, very annoying job. And if this is your only car, your daily commuter, which it is for a lot of people, this is not an over-the-weekend job. Maybe you can get it done over the weekend. You'd be really good to get it done then. But this is a bigger job for most people that's going to take a decent amount of time. So either have rides ready to go or have a second vehicle, because this is not a job that you want to get stuck on and then it affects your life afterwards, not being able to go to work or something. So do think pretty hard for this one, whether you're going to take it to a shop or do it yourself. In any case, this one has already been done before the YouTube channel was started, but I will get one of these with this issue so that you guys can hear what it is, and I'll also go through the steps to do the job. The goal of this video is not to deter those of you thinking about buying this car to not buy it, but you do need to be aware of this problem. And to find one in black with very good paint condition is rare, but I'll go over everything on these cars that you do need to know. With general maintenance, these are one of the most fun commuter cars that you can possibly buy on the market, and you can get them for pretty good prices, and they'll keep going and going as long as you take care of them.